so Merchant of Venus. This is the Fantasy Flight edition.
And we are playing the classic rules tonight,
Playing
correct?
the classic rules. We've never actually played the... what do they call the
standard
other...
rules?
Standard rules. Yeah, we've never really messed with that.
You guys have been, like... You've taken a firm stance against playing the standard rules ever.
I mean, why try? Because the game is damn near perfect.
I think I tried once.
In the classic rules.
Do you turn away the sweetness? That's the question.
I mean...
Variety is the spice of life, gentlemen.
It is, I get that. But I really just like the game the way that it is, honestly. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to giving it
Have
a
you
shot.
ever tried it?
No, I've never tried it.
What have you heard about it?
But it's not the classic.
It's not the
I
classic.
understand that, but
it's got a different running gear. There's extra rules for different things.
Every now and again, you'll bump into somebody on the internet that says, yeah, no, I actually really like the standard rules.
I mean,
most people sit there and say they like the classic.
I'm with Samuel. I'd like to give it a try.
You guys clearly have a history with this game. You want to go into that a little bit?
So, yeah, I was just trying to look up and see what our actual logged history is.
Will Adrian be
This is
giving
Richard
out the names?
This is Richard. Yeah, I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah, we were real busy this weekend, and I wasn't able to nail down a time to get her to. And I feel really bad because I know I butchered those names for Heat Pedal to the Metal. Like,
Those were some tough names.
They were tough.
They're Norwegian or something.
Denmark. They're Danish. And I have one friend that's Danish, and I can only say his first name. His last name has an R and a J next to each other, and I just can't figure it out. All right, so yeah, we've played this one a lot. This is one where in my board gaming infancy, when I was doing nothing but listening to the Dice Tower, Eric Summerer would come on and always talk about Merchant of Venus and how great it was, to the point where he built his own set, and it was ridiculously hard to get a hold of. And I was like, all right, if I'm gonna make a game, this is probably the one I'm going to spend the time to make. And about that time, all the drama started with, what was it, Fantasy Flight and Stronghold.
Yep.
So we knew what was coming. So at that point, I'm like, great, I dodged a bullet. I'll wait till it hits retail, and I'll just pay whatever the price is. And it's a really interesting story in that you've got two publishers that are working independently on reprints for Merchant of Venus, and they one of them kind of teases that they're doing it and as a marketing thing, not as anything else. And I guess it was Bonacor that teased it.
Yes, Stephen Bonacor of Stronghold Games essentially announced over a podcast, very similar to this one, that he had secured the rights to Merchant of Venus, which at the time was one of the grail games that would never be reprinted because Hasbro owned it, and Hasbro were just awful people and wouldn't release it.
And so about that time,
Hasbro are awful people.
Christian Peterson of Fantasy Flight's like, well, wait a minute, we have the rights. And so what you have is you've got the makings of something that could have been terrible.
Could have been a real mess. Yeah.
Could have been a real mess. It could have gone to legal. It could have been dragged out, and this game could have never been made.
Right.
But instead, they came together and they realized this is too good of a game to not put out. So they actually collaborated.
Yes.
Which is unheard of.
Yes, and I'll be honest with you. I think the reason you have two versions of this game in one box is because Stronghold Games wanted to publish the original classic exactly as it was, and Fantasy Flight had already done a revision and had rebuilt some of the game in order to, quote, modernize it. And you can, I haven't played the standard rules, so I can't tell you whether one is better than the other, but the result was that you ended up with both games coming out on the same box, both versions, because everybody loved this game. It was originally an Avalon Hill game. It was in a cheap little box, and it had old-fashioned Avalon Hill markers, which were not terribly exciting. But everybody loved the gameplay. It's a Richard Hamblin game. He's kind of a legend, and that's who Stephen Bonacor, who had gotten with. He had gotten with Stronghold, or Stronghold had gotten with Hamblin, the designer, who felt that he owned the rights to the game, that it had reverted back to him. Meanwhile, Christian Peterson at Fantasy Flight had gotten with Hasbro and had licensed it from them. So between the two of them, they both thought they owned it. When Bonacor went on the podcast and announced that he was making it, the very following morning, Fantasy Flight put out a notice saying, hey, we're going to have this up for sale in the coming months. And that's when everything got heated and excited. And instead of getting nasty with each other and going into court and being in trouble, the two of them found a way to come to common ground and build this version of the game. And it's glorious looking on the table. It's really a beautiful game. And it is everything everybody made it out to be when it was very hard to find. It's just a great play.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about table presence. I mean, first off, the board, it's a nice 6-panel board, and the art's nice and bright, and it's very easy to read. I mean, even across the board, like over in front of Samuel, I can kind of see what's going on over there. It looks great for a sci-fi game.
Once you get the mechanics down, the gameplay is very easy. It's nice to look at. The game pieces, there's nothing cheap looking about it. I mean, I guess they could have made the spaceships a little more detailed, but other than that...
No, the spaceships are fine. Where they kind of skimped, and the only rub I have against this game is the money tokens. They're very tiny, and
what do you think this game needs, John?
The mix in the money tokens is way off, because we often find that we don't have enough of, like...
Yeah, and they use
the 10s or the 5s.
They use the same money tokens for both versions of the game, so you get some odd denominations, like in the classic version of the game. There's dollar coins here. We don't even use them because everything is denominated.
You
in 5
do
or more.
once you own the factory or something like that, because then you get a percentage of when people buy stuff. Because that's where it becomes an issue. Is hey, I get $16 because he just bought that $160.
Oh, okay. I was unaware that we ever used the one, so maybe I'm incorrect on that.
When you build the space stations, you get a 10% kickback.
Okay.
If they buy from.
So it's $120 you're giving out to, and
so how do you play the game? Let's spend 90 seconds just essentially explaining what's sitting on the board.
Okay, great. Who wants to give that a go?
You fly your ship around to planets, buy stuff, and sell it at different planets, hopefully for more money.
Well, it's always for more money, but
yes,
more money than other players.
The nice thing about it is the planets are randomized, and they only want
well, let's
certain
just back
items.
up, because he gave the most vaguest,
He didn't even
ridiculous,
use 90 seconds.
ridiculous overview possible. Okay, so what you have is a map of the galaxy that's 14. That's got 14 planets and a space station that's your home base, and then a couple of other features throughout. On each of the 14 planets is a face-down card. When you explore that planet, when you're the first person to enter orbit, you get to flip it over, and it's going to determine what goods can be sold at that planet and what spaceships and spaceship upgrades you can purchase. So when you're at a planet, you can choose to go down to the planet and pick up the goods, pay money for them, and on the goods token itself, it tells you what other planets will buy those goods from you. So, for instance, at Planet 14, they sell psychotic sculptures. And planets or races 1, 2, 3, and 4 will actually buy those for 250 credits. So you buy it for 120 at Planet 14.
Then you have to fly.
And then you have to fly and find a planet 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you can turn around and sell these psychotic sculptures.
So there are 14 planets, and you put cards down, face down. You shuffle the cards and you drop them down. So every time you play the game, the planets are in, or the cultures are each in a different location. Each civilization changes its location. So one of the things that happens is about halfway through the game, you start finding out, okay, here's a nice little loop down here where I can buy and then sell, move one space, buy, and then sell back in the other direction again. And you kind of get this little churn going the way your company is going to make money. And you've got 4 different people on the board. They may be doing the same loop you are, or they may have their own loop somewhere else. And the idea is to see how well you can do. And frankly, the first person to get to $2,000 wins the game.
Yeah.
Are there loops? Are there civilizations that buy and sell from each other? Because typically it's like...
No, I think you have to do 3
You have to have like a 3, a little...
It's usually a 3. Sometimes you get a 4 that works real well,
I think
too.
4 is the minimum, because each number sells to 4 other ones.
But you can take one step from one planet to another, and then you can be back on a paying cycle again. So it's each time you play, it's a little bit different, and at times it works out really well. At other times you struggle, and then there's these oddballs because these pieces come out of a bag. So somebody's looking for a ride, and you can just give them a ride, and you pick up 100 credits doing that sort of thing. So there's other ways to make some money as well, and you can build factories at places, and it's a very traditional. Build your business sort of game.
Yeah,
it just happens to be set in outer space and
I
spaceships.
enjoy that you can, buy different ship types and upgrade that. That's fun.
Yeah, it's the very definition of pick up and deliver. And it's straight roll and move. So on your turn with the Scout, which is the basic ship, you can roll 3 dice, and the combination of those dice is how many spaces you can move. Now there's some spaces that are warp gates that require you to have a certain die face to go certain ways. That's a little more advanced than I want to talk about right now, but all that to say is sometimes you don't actually get to go the way that you want to, and you have to make detours.
There's a little bit of adventure when you're traveling through space.
And then as you play along, there are these tokens on the board that I don't know what they're called, but
First contact, right?
no, these tokens.
Oh, these are the ones that are first contact, and then these are the exploration markers or something like that.
Yeah, I think
you were
that's
reading
something
Yeah.
like that.
So whatever they're called, I'm sorry. We'll get back to you
There's
on
some
that.
random stuff out in space.
Basically, they flip over and they can be artifacts that change the rules of the game in a way, or they could be like a Nova that basically means you have to pay money to move through that space, or they can be warp gates that will warp you clean across the board. So, I mean, it's about as random as a game can get, but still be very
Still controlled
you can
and still
be
build
in
a
control
strategy.
over it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's probably one of my top 10 games. And I know it's due. It needs to be reprinted again because it's woefully out of print again. But hopefully they can figure it out and get another print run going soon. So, anyone
start
else
playing.
have any parting thoughts before we give this one a shot?
I think my summary was closer to 90 seconds than yours was.
Yeah, but mine was more
The two of yours
informative.
combined were 90 seconds, but Sammy, you've got the start player, so let's get this thing
Grab
moving.
some dice and let's roll.
Hey, I'll edit a beep in, but this game.
I thought you were. Never mind.
I mean, I love this game, but
We're
fuck
going for
this,
the clean.
This particular
This
play of
play.
it was garbage.
It was a solid first, a solid second, a solid third.
That's true. I was kind of dead center in second place. I wasn't
And
going
then
anywhere, no matter what. I
very, very awful, low, just terrible fourth.
did. Oh, everybody did fine.
It was terrible bad.
Everybody did fine.
So Steven had a rough time tonight. He just kind of couldn't get things rolling, and you were just getting these die rolls that were just killing you. You had a chunk in the game where you were looking to roll a 4. All you needed was 1 4 on 3 dice, turn after turn after turn. You were not rolling 4s, and just to rub it all in, we were rolling 4s out the wazoo.
I got to be
three,
honest with
three
you,
4s
man.
in
When you
one
can't-
shot.
3 4s in one
Yeah.
shot after Steven had tried to roll
When
a
you
4
when
like
you
3
can't
times.
roll a 4, you kind of just got to pick a different plan.
Which is
Pick a
exactly
different
what I
number.
ended up doing.
I know,
But
but
I
you-
waited-
what did he do?
Yep, he rolled 4s.
But you kept trying.
Well, I had whatever the goods were at the bottom left of the board.
Right, and you were
So
your,
they
your
were-
holds were full.
They were like 3. They were the 3 goods. I needed to go up to the top right of the board where there was a warp gate that was a 4,
Yeah.
and there was a warp gate down at the bottom.
You were all
left.
set. All you needed to do was
All
roll
I needed
4,
was roll the
and
4
magic.
because
You
if
would've shot
I
across the
had rolled that 4, I could have gone up there, sold. I could have bought the 4s, the 3s or the 4s or whatever they are out there,
Yep.
and then go down to the 6. I would have discovered the 6, and I would have been in very good position.
Yep.
All right, so I missed that.
We knew it was the 6 because all the other places were already out.
Yeah, so I missed that on the first roll. Okay, no big deal. I can eat a turn and still do okay on this. I might be able to beat Chris. All right, whatever. So I missed it the second time around. That's when you show up
Yeah, on the other side of the board.
and hoover everything.
Ate his lunch.
And Chris got whatever it was that he wanted. So the third turn, I'm like, all right, well, I can limp through this and be okay.
And thank God you rolled a 4.
But I did not roll a 4.
You didn't roll a 4.
So at that point, I'm like, you know what? I've got to find another route. And that's when I...
On the bright side,
There's no bright side.
Nobody's ship exploded, and everybody found
and-
their
and
home
I
world.
will admit it was pretty easy for me.
No, I didn't
'cause
find my homeworld.
I had the relic that gave me a 4 at every turn whenever I wanted it.
To be fair, that is the nature of this game. Is you got to roll with the punches. You can have all the plans in the world, but something is going to shift out from under you, and you've got to be ready to change on a moment's notice. So you have to have these nice, basic, foundational pieces going on. You got to make it so your ship can go faster. You got to have the shield so you're not eating up all the money on your way there. You got to be able to roll with those punches. That's
if
all
I
part
recall, the last time we played, I got stuck in that warp gate
of it.
center
down
thing.
in the bottom. Yeah, that's a mess. I never go there.
And I think if I remember correctly, I wasted like 4 turns in that because I could not roll any numbers to get out
That
of
would
the
get
gate.
you out. Yep.
Sometimes I hate this game.
So our game
I
ran
had a
how
good
long?
time.
Our game ran about 2
a
hours.
little over 2 hours. It was
for
pretty
a
quick.
4-player game.
We kept it moving.
And we were cruising, and we've played faster. I mean, I remember games where, like, more or less all 3 of us were taking our turns.
I think there was 2 or 3 times that people just kind of zoned out or didn't know it was their turn. I was one of them.
Yep. And that's we're not the fastest players on earth. We sit down to play one game in the evening. So if it ends up taking a little longer, we don't.
Yeah,
get
and
that
the
concerned
other part of it is there's no direct interaction with each other.
I was
Yeah.
kept
So-
wanting to take pot shots at Chris.
Yeah,
There was
so
a couple times I was lined up to take a shot at John, but
You're making jokes, and I'm trying to make a point here.
At least be funny if you're going to do it.
All right, Chris goes to
Chris
timeout.
goes to the penalty
Chris
box.
is in timeout.
Oh man,
Uh,
out of this world.
what is it? Typically 2 minutes.
All right, start the clock.
Clock is on. You've got 2 minutes to make your point, Stephen.
All right,
I
Steven.
forgot where I was.
Player interaction.
Oh yeah, okay, great. So there's no actual direct player interaction in this game, so the amount of paying attention that you have to do on other people's turns is very limited.
Yeah.
The only time you really have to pay attention is when people are selling, because my favorite mechanism of the game is anytime, backing up, I have a Crown Royal bag that has all of the merchant tokens. They call
Right. The chips that
The-
they essentially
so-
run the economy.
So at the beginning of the game, all it is a bunch of demand tokens, which basically get pulled out, eventually put onto the different planets, and you get bonus money when you sell at that planet.
Yeah.
you sell
Sometimes
that
big
good
bonus
at that
money.
planet.
Yeah.
So when you sell a good, you pitch it into the Crown Royal bag, and then you shake it up and you pull one out and you replace it. So on the board at any time, there's always the same amount of tokens, but they change.
Okay. I guess that is true because it's one out, one in, or
One
in,
out,
one out.
One in, one out. And if you do a demand, it's 2 in, 2 out.
Right.
But what it gives you is a dwindling supply in certain areas, and then really high demand in other areas. So it really incentivizes you to go to certain spaces on the board.
Right. So, and that's part of that roll with the punches thing because you'll be sitting there saying, I'm going to 7, and then the planet number 8 suddenly gets 2 demand tokens for what you've got, and they're suddenly worth like an extra $150.
Well, that was the
which
rule
is
that
huge.
Sam had wrong, where they didn't build on top of each other. You just got the top one.
Yeah, we were doing that wrong.
You did that wrong. We were doing it right.
You looked it up and were like, "Oh, that's how this works."
I had to look it up because you did not believe me. You
don't
challenged
remember
my
not believing
authority, and you were wrong.
Okay. All right.
So there is a fair amount of rule density. This is a more deluxe game, all right. This kind of thing, and it's right in Fantasy Flight's wheelhouse, and it's right in Richard Hamblin's wheelhouse, and he's written far more complicated games. But I mean, there's stuff to go on here. This is a deluxe game. This is not something you're going to bring out, learn in 15 minutes, and knock out in half an hour.
Yeah,
it's
you're
not
gonna-
Azul.
This
It's
is not your
nothing like
amateur
that.
gamer is going to enjoy playing.
Yeah.
this.
You're gonna
It's gonna
learn
blow
this
their
game,
mind.
and the second game you're going to say, okay, we got a couple things wrong.
Yeah.
Let's fix them.
Yeah, it's one of those games
mean,
that you
it's-
play it once and then you pull the rule book out and you review and go, okay, now that I've got the footing
That
on
makes
how
a
the
little
game
more sense,
works,
yeah.
right, everything can start tuning
I mean,
in.
it's a rule book with percentages in it. Any game that has percentages in it does tend to be heavier.
Okay.
Yeah, they're small percent.
No, I'm not
The
saying-
percentages are a small part
I'm
of the
not
game.
saying the math is heavy. I'm saying any game that asks you to do math involving percentages is going to be heavier.
Well, I think just looking at the thickness of the rule book will give you a pretty good idea, and it's
And it was pretty nice. I think everything was in 50 or 10%. And was there stuff that sold for like 90? I think it was.
Yeah.
I think everything was like 100, 120. It was
No,
like
there
even
was-
numbers.
It was all tens and I think it was all
percent.
10s.
It was all by tens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this game it's all by tens. But if you take 10% of $10, you end up with every once in a while you end up with $1 and $2, which
Yeah.
I had forgotten about.
I
just
ended
kinda
up
float
with
around.
3 ones. at the
Yeah,
end of the
I had
game.
forgotten about that. I thought everything rounded off to the nearest 5, and it
That
doesn't.
I think was like we talked about that as probably the weakest part of this game was the cash. We were constantly looking for tens.
Physically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and physically, and there's a lot of people that have their official dollars or their clay tokens or whatever it is, and so that can be replaced relatively easily. Yeah, but functionally, those are a little bit more trouble. The rest of the tiles, I think, all work pretty well, and the board is like a carnival. I mean, there's nothing classy and reserved about this game.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
big primary colors.
I think my biggest gripe with this game is how noisy the board is. That's it. I mean, you can parcel
The
it out.
youngins
and
saying
understand.
it's a noisy board.
It's a
Randling
noisy
Brothers
board.
Barnum and Bailey Circus is noisy as well, but you get to see elephants when you go there.
I
I mean,
didn't-
that's
it's
part
not
of it.
anymore.
Not anymore.
It's-
You can see
Oh, I
posters
know.
of
They got
elephants.
rid of the whole circus.
Yeah, it's
so
pretty-
now you have to play Merchants of Venus.
It's
if you want
pretty to
get
look
that
at.
kind of a-
The colors are nice,
Mhm.
but it is a very visually noisy board, especially when you get all the tokens and stuff on it.
But you kind of need it to be. You need that noise so you can see at a glance.
Oh.
and from across the board, across the table, what's going on.
But no, it's it works.
Because if
right?
it were
It's-
a more muted, like if it were a more muted art style, I feel like a lot of the information would get lost.
Would get
I
lost.
agree.
It-
Well,
we had
frankly,
joked-
I think. I mean, it's noisy, but it also imparts a sense of energy and like franticness
and fun.
and fun that I think you benefit from, because part of the game is rolling the dice and seeing what you get, but it's also really easy to sit down and just like, all right, I'm gonna find the most optimal path and do that until you win.
Yeah.
So
And the energy helps with that.
John made a joke about, man, this game needs to be 1, 2, 3, 4 in categories and very sectored and stuff. And that's part of the magic of the game is it's not.
Yeah, I agree.
You have no idea where 9 is. How many times did you pull something out and go,
yeah.
where the heck is 13? Or where's we knew where 2
Every
was.
single
time.
time. And
Two we had
after playing
memorized.
for an hour, you think you would have a pretty good idea where the numbers are, but you don't. So I realized, somebody help me find 7, and somebody points down at the board.
Yeah,
and
I mean
get it.
that's part of the fun is you like go,
and-
where do I sell this, and you end up somewhere random and
It's
work
part
with
of the
it.
design of the game that every time you so everybody talks about replayability and they say, well, replayability is there's 32 scenarios. It's like, no, replayability is when the board changes shape every time you play it, and this board changes shape every time you play it. So no matter how well you did last time and figured out, hey, this is my nice little corner of the world and I can angle it, next time you play, that's not going to be there. You got to find your new angle.
And frankly, that's the magic of this game for me, is that every time you play, it's different. If it were the same every time, this would be, I think, a pretty boring game.
Yeah.
You'd play it once or twice, you'd go, wow, and then you'd learn the paths and what way to go and how to do things, and you'd stop caring.
Yeah.
But because it changes and the trade routes shift and move around every game, you go, oh, let's see where I take things this time.
Yeah, there's a lot of complete randomness in this game with the layout of the board and then the
warp gates.
the in and out of the commerce tokens, the relics that show up, because not all of the relics show up. We only had 4 of the 6
yeah, in
warp
fact,
gates
there's a
out.
fair chunk of them that don't.
Yeah. Normally you see 2, maybe 3 warp gates. This is the
Yeah.
most I think we've ever seen. And there was a lot of relics.
Frankly, I think the relics on the warp gates are way more interesting than the.
Yeah. But I mean, you think about it,
Nebula.
you had like 6 of the relics. And there were
I had 4.
4.
I had the Mulligan die, the Spy Eye, the Autopilot, and the Gate Lock.
Okay.
Yeah, he
So-
only had 4.
I threw mine away.
You threw yours away, and I think
I
you
had the
one or
crazy
2.
gate
I had
one.
3. I had
Well,
2.
And I turned it
Well,
into a shield.
But
wall.
those are you're
regardless.
making $60 to $100 on a trade. Picking those up, it's a
Oh yeah, there was plus
It's a nice
400.
windfall.
Yeah.
It was plus $400.
and it definitely helps with traveling. At
It
the
did.
end, you didn't care about the gate locks at all because you could just I'll go this way, this way,
Yeah,
this way.
no, it let me win.
Yeah.
For sure. And that's because my strategy in the beginning of this game is always fly around and hoover up as many of the exploration tokens as you can. Both because I really enjoy exploring in games. I think that's a lot of fun. And also because the relics are super cool and I love tweaking the rules. Frankly, I'm a little disappointed John got the
crazy
what was the
gate.
name of it? The crazy gate thing?
That's not the name of it.
That's
but-
not the name of it. But basically every turn, instead of standard movement, he'd jump to a semi-random warp gate, and he was just teleporting all over the map, and he threw it away because he got stuck or he wanted to land on a planet,
Any planet.
and every turn he ended up teleporting
it got
to
to
a
the point
gate.
it's like,
He
look,
couldn't
I
reach
just- I
anywhere.
gotta
Well, when he
get rid
first
of
got
this.
it, there were no gates out.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we turned
And
over 4.
I thought it was really cool. It wasn't great,
Was it
apparently.
cool or was it cruel?
No,
that
I would
he
have
would
loved to try and make
he
it
would-
work.
You get like real close to the planet, but not land on
Yeah,
it.
he would come out the one gate, and he would need
8, and he would get a
need
7.
he would need 9 to land on a planet, and he would roll a 7 or an 8 every time. He did that like 4 times.
Part of it
for,
is the gate I needed to get to was a
Yeah,
1.
it was
so
placed-
in order to be there, I needed to roll a 1. So I had 2 dice left to cover about, I think it was 9 spaces what I need. So it's,
Yeah.
it's
Well, you could have
a little
like
bit
tried
longer
for a
reach.
different gate. If
Yeah,
you
you
didn't
could have
roll
tried
it,
for
then
a-
you could have
but-
chose the 1.
Yeah, you could have tried for a different gate or gone
But
for a
I-
different planet.
Yeah, but none of those were solving my problem. That's why I was going for the 1. I mean, I was there for a reason. And when I first got it, that 1 was the second gate out on the board. I'm like, okay, so the 4 and the 1 were going to bounce me back and forth and back and forth, and I was going to have a nice little set there. And then it just said, nope, that's just not going to work. And that's how it went. And then with the other 2 gates coming out, I'm like, at that point, this thing just becomes.
Oh, the other 2 gates were awful.
Yeah, 5 and 6.
Yeah,
I
they
think.
were
and-
they were
and
down
2
in the-
spaces
they were
away
down
from
in the
each
swamp.
other.
Yeah. 2
So, like,
spaces away from each other.
When I first revealed him, it's basically like I go from 1 to the I went from the 5, and then to the 6, then back to the 5, and then back to the 6 because of the ways that my rolls were. And it's just like,
Yeah, I mean,
okay, I just wasted another turn going back and forth between these 2
gates.
gates.
My dice. I could set one of mine to a 4, so I used it to jump to the other side of the board. Yeah. But I really liked the crazy thing John had because I thought it was really neat how it changed his gameplay entirely.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out well for him, but I would have loved the chance to try and make it work myself.
Yeah,
even
if
if
it
I
just been in another spot, it might have worked real well.
And had the other 2 warp gates not been on top of each other and been a
Yeah.
little more, if you had like a warp gate in each quadrant, you could have made it work.
Okay, so here's the
Yeah.
killer, and this is the killer in this game. Is this thing you start thinking about the entire time you play? Because you got a spaceship and you carry stuff from one place to another. Well, in order to do that, you need to fill your ship up. All right, and once your ship is full, you've got to dump goods because that's where your money comes from, and that's how you get space to pick up something. You've got to complete that transaction. So I have a ship with 2 cargo holds, and I cannot get to a place where I can dump the goods. I cannot get to a place where I can sell and buy, and that's what was killing me with that. If I'd had the ship that had 5 spaces, then when you end up going to the wrong place, you're like, oh, okay, I'm here. I'll grab something here. And you've got 5 spaces to fill that up. So if I'd been able to get the big freighter, then that might have made a difference. But with the scout ship early in the game, it was just a kiss of death because I was full. So I
or
had
if
a
you
choice.
had the Clipper, you could have
just-
gotten farther.
I want to say, if you had the freighter, you would have only been rolling 2 dice.
2
Right,
dice.
yeah.
2 dice, yeah.
And you would have gotten nowhere on a 1.
Well, he would have gone over and shot.
Well,
Sam.
but I wouldn't have had to need to go to that one place because
Well,
I
you-
would have had 3 more slots, and I could have kind of
But
loped
you
around
would have
other
been
parts of the
limited
board.
to 2d6 spaces from any warp gate
He would have been limited to 1d6 plus 1
from that warp gate.
from that
Yeah.
from that warp gate that he kept rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd be far more likely to not roll one of the warp gates because if I only had 2 dice.
Potentially.
The warp
So
gates
you're
were
stuck down
1,
in the middle
4,
of
5,
everywhere.
and 6. Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was pretty zany how
it was
pretty zany.
this was a neat game.
I thought it was neat. I will say another thing I enjoy is the way they do ship speed. Mm-hmm. There's 4 classes of ships, and you roll between 2 and
2, 3, 3, and 4.
Yeah, 2, 3, 3, and 4. So between 2 and 4 dice, depending on your ship type. But there's also different drive types where you can skip over certain colored spaces on the board.
Mm-hmm.
So you can skip over yellow or yellow and red, which really makes you go fast, even with the freighter, where you can haul a bunch of stuff. And I remember just flying through space in previous games because you're skipping every other space.
Yeah. You almost have to have the combo drive if you get a freighter.
Right, but
Yeah,
once you
right.
do, you're making bank.
You can go like crazy.
Yeah, and that's the
And I
that's
really
the route
enjoy
that
that.
I normally take.
Yeah.
I went a different strategy this time. Did
Yeah.
not work. There.
Yeah,
I really enjoy how that works.
And so
mechanically.
and that's I always say I like a game where you can put your own personality into it. And there's some games I can sit there and close my eyes and say, okay, how would Chris play this game? How would Steven play this game? How would Sam play this game? And each of us bring something different to the table. And how would I play this game? Obviously, although I don't try to figure out my own brain on that kind of thing. But I mean, at one point after watching Chris do really well with that monster freighter, I mean, he's loping along, but when he delivered, he just a pile of cash.
$600, please.
Right. So at that point, I'm like, so the next time we played, I'm like, I'm going to play Chris's game. I'm going to see what this is like. And there's a moment of frustration when you're not getting anywhere quickly, but then suddenly you unload and it's like, I am cash fat. I've got everything I need to do whatever I want.
And the other part of that is depending on how the game sets up.
Yeah, the game
Like,
set up totally different.
Sometimes sometimes that strategy won't work, and then sometimes you look at it and you're like, okay, the Clipper strategy. Like I've done the Clipper strategy a couple times.
Lighter and faster.
So you have only 2 cargo spots, but you know what you can do with 2 cargo spots? You can carry 4 passengers.
Yep. And if the passengers are out there to grab, you can do
And
great.
sometimes, like you said, if the passengers are there to grab, you can do that. Sometimes the passengers don't come up.
Yep.
Or they're so spread out it's not worth
It just
trying.
doesn't
I was
work,
in the Clipper and I picked up a couple passengers. We had an unfortunate airlock incident with one on a planet, but other than that, I delivered 2.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
there just weren't a lot of passengers
Yeah,
out there.
the first time I played this game, I ended up with $1,990 behind the guy who won with like 2010, and I was doing nothing but delivering passengers because they were all over the board and nobody else wanted them. They were all carting cargo and they were full, so they could never pick them up. And I was just, I could go in any direction and there was something to deliver. And that's the way this game sets up, the way those pieces come out of the bag, you're going to get a different play every time you play this game. And that's Hamblin's thing. He just has a way of figuring that out. And, you know, we've talked about really well-developed games. This game, in spite of it being built in the 1990s, was just really well developed. The Baltimore boys at Avalon Hill played the heck out of a game until they got it honed down to what it should be. And this was one of the examples. And that's, I'll be honest, that's why I typically reach for the classic game, because I'm much more trusting of the work they were doing in the 80s and 90s at Avalon Hill than I am with the work that's getting done now and is moving too quickly. There's
1988.
1988. Thank you very much. So it's earlier than I thought. I think there are good games coming out now, but I think there's an awful lot of games coming out that I'm like, it just wasn't quite tuned up enough. And with something like this, you feel the tuning. It may not be your kind of game, and that's fine. I understand that. But what it does really well. And if it's your kind of game, it's the kind of game you're going to want to come back to every 6 months.
Yeah, I don't know what they are, but I know there were some edits that were done to the classic game and the original 1988 version.
Okay.
And I think, if I recall, it was just the number of spaces between them, the planets, and then the overall layout. I think they fixed.
I know they made things clearer.
Yeah,
that I know.
Oh, and the other thing is, like, some of the planets were like Planet 7 and 7A, 7A and 7B.
Mm-hmm.
Every planet, or every good ship to the next 4 planets.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a couple of planets where there was a A and a B, so those would go to 5 planets.
Okay.
And me just describing it that way
tells you just how
is
clunky that was.
It's convoluted. What
Yeah.
they've done is they've gone 1 to 14,
Yeah.
and then the goods that would ship to 5 places instead of 4 places, they've just renumbered them to where it makes sense that way.
Okay.
So you look at it here.
So that's a clarity change. It's not a game change.
Because it used to be like there was, like, at the bottom of the good, it didn't say this good delivers to 2, 3, 4, and 5. The rule was it delivers up to 4 spaces.
Up to 4 numbers above
Up to 4 numbers above. That was just the rule.
Okay.
And so you had that 7A and that 7B, so that you had 2 extra places that you could drop that good off.
So they declunkified it for that
Essentially.
kind of thing. Okay.
So
I haven't played the original since like 2008 or something.
Yeah. So they made polish and clarity changes, but they didn't change the system that much at all.
Okay.
Now the advanced game, or the standard game, I guess is what Fantasy Flight's calling it. If I recall again, I've read the rule book. There's a lot more ship customization that you can do.
Okay.
And then there are event tiles that you draw.
Okay.
So
I'm sold.
I'm in. I love ship customization.
yeah. So
May Game-a-thon. We'll play it with the standard.
what was the game? Oh, so El Grande. We were talking about why we thought Sam didn't like El Grande, right? And we came to the conclusion that it's too simple. There's essentially 2 running gears to El Grande.
Yeah.
It's putting the people out, and then the area majority part of just scoring.
Yeah,
so
right.
really, it's a very simple game. Now, if there was some kind of board on the side that you had to manage some kind of a resource to be able to put your guys out, or a resource to be able to put out more grandes,
Or there was demand in Catalonia for people.
Or you had to
Yeah.
explore Catalonia to figure out
And-
where the Castile
right.
was.
So that would make
And
for a
discover
more
the jump gate in medieval
that
Spain.
would make for a more
Right.
interesting game for Sam because
It would. Yes.
he's a millennial, and that's what
It's the ADD.
that too. He needs the extra levers to pull. I feel like
It's
if
the extra.
I feel like if we
stimulation.
put
Yeah.
if we put out
Stimulation.
the standard board, I have a feeling that these two, Chris and Sam, would like it a lot better, and me and you probably would be. Can we go back
You
to
know,
the
Stephen, we have 2 copies
Can we
of
go
this
back
game.
to the classic
we
game?
can play back to back. We can play one
Side-
standard and
No, side by side.
Same time. You take
Same
your turn
time.
in
That's what I'm
standard.
saying.
You take your turn in
Two
classic.
tables. You get over there. You take your turn. It would go. It's like how fast it would go
Oh,
though. 'cause
no, it would be
you take
terrible.
your turn.
Oh my
Golly.
god, my head hurts so bad right now.
We'll have a fifth person set it up so that as close as possible, the randomization is the same
Yeah, and,
too.
and you know the last thing you need? Tequila shots to go with it.
That's right.
The other thing to note about the standard game is there are a set number of turns.
Okay.
So
Oh, okay. So it's
It's-
pretty different.
it's there are quite a few differences. I think in the spirit of the game is about the same in that the planets have different cultures that come up in different places. So the cultures are all randomized and the goods are all randomized. I still feel like the goods bag is still there. So I think the spirit of the game is still the same. It's just the levers that go along with it are different. So anyway, we've talked pretty extensively about our experience with Merchant of Venus. We've touched on the history of it a bit.
I have one experience I'd like to share that you can probably tell a little better than I can.
Oh, okay. So this is tangential to our game. So we were at Gen Con.
Yeah, because we were in the
Same
Gen
year
Con
as re-release.
auction area.
Alright, hold on a
We
second.
used to like to
All
go
right.
and hang out in the auctions.
So this was released in 2012. So this had to have been Gen Con 2011.
Yeah.
So
12 years ago.
we like to one of the highlights of Gen Con for us is twofold. We love the auction because it's an opportunity for us to offload a bunch of games, make a little bit of money, but at the same time it gives us the opportunity to see and pick up games
Pick up some of the classic games that you
the classic games
can't
that we
find or-
might not be able to find elsewhere. So up comes a copy, new and shrink, like unopened, 1988 Merchant of Venus. Starting bid is $100. First person, someone's like, okay, great, $100. Okay, 110, sure, 110. It goes up to $120 and stalls. The auctioneer is like, okay, look, I cannot let this sell for $210.
$120.
$120. Sorry.
120,
thank you.
yeah.
I cannot let this sell for $120. I mean, there was no reserve on it, so technically he could.
It was sold.
And the guy that is trying to buy it for $120 is like, shut up and give me my game.
Exactly.
But he just kept going. He's like, no. He's like, someone's going to need to give me 130. And so he talked the auction up to about 150.
I mean, it took like 10 minutes before everybody said, oh, I'm just going to pay an extra $10 just to shut them
Yeah,
up.
so I think it ended at like 150. But, this was a game that before second edition was announced was going for like $200 on a decent played copy. A new and shrink copy at that time was going for around $400 to $500.
Except for this one.
Except for this one because
You said they announced the reprint.
they had announced the reprint and everyone was just going to why pay $500 for a game when you can just pay retail what I think was $60, but
The people that were in that auction that heard that guy just going and going and
They
trying
wanted
to
to
push it.
shut up and
I'm
move on.
sure there's somebody listening to this podcast that's going to sit there and go, I was in that room. I remember that. They just drop us a line on Discord or something. Just say, I remember.
I mean, it was
It was very memorable to both of us. Because
Yeah,
we
but-
still joke about it all the time.
it just was like he would not let it. The auctioneer would not let it go.
I'd be mad if I was
and
the
the
guy who
guy
was
that
buying
was
it for
trying to
120.
buy
People were
it
getting upset.
was fuming, and everyone in the crowd's like, "Look, give it to him.
Give it to him. It's 120.
It's $120. That's all anyone wants to pay for it. Give it to him." And
It was
he's like,
funny at first,
and he was
but-
like, "No, this game should be at least going for $300." He said that like twice.
I know. And people in the room, it started to turn on him.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was that story. We've got other Gen Con auction stories that we may get to, but
At least this one was kind of
They're
relevant.
legendary.
yeah. Anyway,
right.
so
I won.
circling back around, we've talked about the game. We talked about the experience that we've had this time. Talked a little bit about the presentation and how busy the board is. Yes, Samuel, you won. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what your final thoughts are?
So I don't remember winning this game regularly. I'm sure Steven will check.
It just happened a moment ago.
Well, I said regularly.
Oh.
So I did just win. And also, John, I think, did I win by more than one turn?
No, because he would have gotten...
in another turn, I probably would have been over 2,000, but you would have had another turn to make some bucks too. So
Okay. Well, no, because you were the
won.
last player.
So this is your first win that I have logged.
Okay. I mean, I don't play this a ton.
And
but
we
it was my
typically
first
play
one.
it twice, a couple times a year.
Wasn't that long ago we played it here?
But I really enjoyed it. Normally, I would probably say this isn't the kind of game I would enjoy, just because, as you mentioned, there isn't a ton of player interaction, right? You can compete a little for demand and for passengers, and there's limited quantities of things on the board, but there's still plenty of stuff on the board. You're very unlikely to be going for the same thing as everyone else. Despite that, I think it's a fun puzzle to try and solve. You get to see how things shake out and try and come up with your own route and make it work. And I really enjoy that aspect of this because it's different. It's different every time.
Yeah.
If it weren't for that, you'd have to talk me into playing this game. But it is different, so it's a fun little puzzle. That said, I'm going to give this game a solid 7.
Okay.
I enjoyed it. I certainly know people who would enjoy playing this, but at the end of the day, I think I'm glad I don't have to own a copy.
All right, awesome. So let's see. John was next.
Okay.
Tell us about Merchants of Venus, John.
How does it make you feel?
It's a game where you can kind of wander around and do what you want. So I think is that called a sandbox game?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
kind
that's
of
what they mean by a
sandboxing.
sandbox. I like games with maps and games where you kind of got to figure out how to get from here to there and where it actually makes a material difference in what you're playing. So this game is right in my wheelhouse, and I can't say that I'm particularly any better at it than anybody else. I think I win my share, and that's fine. But there's interesting things, and it's kind of a heuristic play. You've got some basic general rules on how to succeed, but then you have to apply them moment to moment. Even between turns, you're sitting there, you can end up changing your mind because of the way other people have cruised on by. And you sit there and you say there's not a lot of player interaction. The nature of a pick-up-deliver game is you get in there and you swipe it out from under somebody and you move on. And compared to a lot of modern games, there's every bit as much player interaction here as just about everything that's coming out where, at best you're putting your guy in somebody else's way so they can't get their 2 brown cubes or whatever it is. I think it rolls along with everybody else from that perspective.
I mean, there's definitely indirect interaction. Yes, there's a race to get the goods
There's
and
no
to get the
shooting at
good
each other.
price, but you can't block somebody from going into a space. Sure, you can buy the last whatever, but
yeah, I even think blocking is a weak T. Now, if you could shoot somebody or you could steal their stuff, you show up at the same spaceport and you can grab their stuff like off of their flight deck. That would be some player interaction, and that would be kind of neat. But similar to the way we were talking about Heat, I mean, this is a game where you can put a fair number of house rules in to just kind of give it whatever flavor you want to make it more or less lucrative, that sort of thing.
I suppose from my perspective, I didn't really interact with any of you guys at all over the course of this game. Right? I didn't really care what you did. Your actions did not impact my choices. I just did my own thing.
So all in all, I enjoy the game. It's a game you pull out once a year, once every 6 months maybe. And part of that is because there's a fair amount of brain load here. I mean, it's not a light game that you knock out in half an hour. And I actually had a very bad day at work today. I had production down at work today, so I kind of came staggering in here and sat down on the couch. But as it turns out, I managed to get through this pretty well. I mean, there's a little bit of rule density here, but you can always look that up. And it's fun to fly your ship around. It's a game you can come in third place and still say, I did okay because I came up with $1,500.
Apparently,
I mean,
you can't say that in fourth place. Though.
why are are you rubbing it in?
No, you can. Well,
No, I'm the one who can say, I did okay. I finished up with like 16, 20 or something like that.
I mean, obviously, you don't want to come in last place. You're better off coming in first place. But at the same time, it's similar to a lot of economic games, and that's fundamentally what this is. You're driving a ship instead of building a factory or something. But it's at the end of it, you can say, yeah, I kind of got my stuff going. I got my big ship, and I'm making business, and that's that I did okay. Even if I didn't win, I did okay. I actually built something. It's nice to be able to look at something you built and say, this is mine.
Said the loser.
No, I just, John, everything you're saying, I agree with.
I didn't say you didn't.
It doesn't normally happen.
What doesn't normally happen?
Yeah, there's usually friction between you two.
Yeah, there's usually friction between our viewpoints,
There's
but
constantly friction between us. Sam.
everything you said, I agree with.
Okay, well, if it makes you feel any better, I disagreed with most of what you said, and
Okay.
we can just call it even.
All right, that does make me feel
So
better.
give us a number, John. Let's see if we can agree to disagree on a number here.
I think I hate to go too big on this. I'll go with a really, really strong 7. And it's a game to keep in your pocket. This game is, quote, out of print, which really means it's out of stock because I don't sort of Monopoly and like Parcheesi, there are no games that are like being printed constantly. They get done in slugs. And this I don't
Ticket to
think-
Ride.
I don't and Ticket to Ride. But even that's done in
Settlers of
slugs.
Catan.
But this is a game that is a little hard to find. But if you want to find, and the thing is, if you buy it used, you're going to sell it for the same price you buy it if you decide you don't like it. So it's actually probably safer to buy this as a used copy than to try and find a copy that's new. And the copy that I bought was used, and it came with Plano boxes, and everything was sorted and neat, and it's really sweet, and I actually got a lot of value add. Probably the box that I got for half price was a better purchase than buying it new and having to punch everything out myself and organize it myself. So
There was a lot of punching in this game, that's for sure.
Oh, I believe it. All right, Chris.
All right, Chris, you were third place.
I was third place, and I did okay. I
Can you
ended up
just
with
go
16, 20.
so I can get mine over with?
Yes, yes, yes. I disagree a lot with what John was saying. There were times I was on the board, and I was like, at the beginning of the game, I was like, man, I am going to shoot John. Because that's what I wanted. I wanted a little bit of conflict. There isn't conflict in this game.
There's really not.
Which is nice. It was 2 hours. It was quick. It was fast-paced. You do a lot of thinking, a lot of planning and stuff.
conflict and interaction are two different things, but fair enough.
Yeah. It would be nice, I don't know, if you could do something like tractor beam or
heck yeah.
It just push somebody onto another spot.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
I'm all
Yeah.
in.
Or like leave a mine floating in space or something to like block something.
I think that would be cool, but that would be another game. This game is really good the way that
Yeah.
it is. So I don't think you need to change it, but for
Oh my
me,
God,
with
how
this
long
version,
would that game be?
I know. For this version of the game, it was good and it does what it's supposed to do, and I enjoy playing it all the time. It's a game that it does what it doesn't outstay its time on the board.
Nice. Nice one.
So overall,
No, you're going to have to say that again because I swore.
it doesn't outstay its time on the table.
Doesn't overstay its welcome.
Fucker.
You really have to stay on top of the game status.
Go ahead, call it a nice filler game. Call it a.
It's definitely not a filler game.
No,
it's
it's
a high, it's a high
engaging.
level.
It is
It's a
engaging.
very engaging game. There was, we're all planning, plotting. Nothing changes on the board except for maybe there's in demand over here, but what you have is what you have.
Yeah, you can totally plan out your turn ahead of time.
Yeah, it was.
Even-
There were a lot of times it's like, oh, I'm flying. I didn't make it there. It's the next person's
this
turn.
time 3 people can be taking their turn
Yeah, I mean,
simultaneously.
even if it's 90% solitaire, everyone's solving the puzzle in a different way. It's
Yeah, and just trying to be the fastest and the best at it. So my rating on this, I'll give it a straight 7. I enjoy it, but there are other games that I could put in front of it.
Okay.
Steven, you came in last.
Steven.
Subjectively, this particular play, I want to rate it so low.
Such
You're
a
talking
weak
like a
7.
basement 7.
I mean, like
Like a cellar.
like a
Like a
Cellar
Cellar
7.
7.
Look, I did not do well this game. We can put that out there. We can get it out of the way. Despite that, the classic game of Merchant of Venus is fundamentally it's such a beautiful game. It's so good that despite how bad I did, I can just see past it. And, you know, we've played this. I have 4 games logged. I have 5 games logged now. I know we've played this at least a dozen times within the group over the years. And I have very fond memories, and I'm always looking to play this game. Like, I know it's a time commitment, so sometimes you have to take that into account, but man, it's a lot of fun, even when you're losing. Yeah, you know, the die rolls, they never went my way, but every time the whole table was groaning with me.
It tells a story.
I mean, it was
a story.
It was an event that I could not roll a freaking 4.
Mm-hmm.
Three rolls in a row, and then even 2 rolls after that, I still couldn't roll a 4. And
then John rolls 3 of them.
yeah, and then
Triple
John,
fours.
yeah, triple 4s. So, how many games can you think of that can actually do that?
Yeah. How many games allow you to be that obnoxious grandfather that tells you the inane stories about stuff you don't care about? Because at some point in your future, you're going to be like, you know, Sonny, when I was playing that game, and you're going to have 100 stories, and there's, you know, we've played hundreds of titles, and there's probably 600 of them that if we saw the name, we'd go, I don't remember that at all. Merchant of Venus is one of the titles that you remember the game, you remember individual plays and the kind of things that happen.
And not only that, in the games that I have logged, I have not won a single time.
Oh, you tell us this now?
Yeah. So, also, in the games that I've logged, because I logged the scores as well, the highest I've ever earned was 17,000.
100.
1,700. 1,700.
You won 17,000. You won.
Yeah. Sorry. 17,000.
Maybe they need to add a
1,700.
So,
So-
one time I did okay.
So you've come in second?
I don't know. I'd have to like really dig into that.
1,700 could be.
That could be a second.
It could be
That
second.
would have
it
been
could
third
be
in this game.
Third, yeah.
Yeah. So
Depends. Was he
it
playing
wasn't
solo?
1,100. 1,700 is respectable, whatever place you're in. So,
yeah, but you know, Steven, 2 more turns and you would have been there. You were just getting your footing.
yeah,
This is, you are so close
I
to
probably
just
would have
knocking
been
it out of the park that
I
you
probably
need to
would have
play
been
this
like
game again.
1450 2 turns from now.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, but then you can spend all your money on a big pickup, and then you go and you win.
and then I would need like another 3 turns.
All right, well, you know.
So, I mean, we'd be playing for another hour, and y'all'd be at 40,000.
Yeah, probably.
We could have sandbagged it.
So yeah,
We do that for you.
but regardless,
So next time, just remember.
objectively, this is a great game. Based on how I played, I want to rate it low, but based on what I know of this game, objectively, it's a 7.
Okay.
So I'm happy that we got to it, and I'm going to be happy that. Okay, well, they're all right. So Chris is showing us online what the prices are on eBay.
It's like 80.
They're pretty reasonable.
$75
so,
to
yeah,
$90.
Go out and buy a copy because
Like you said,
If it turns out you don't like it, you sell it for the exact same price.
honestly, $80 is cheaper than what this would be at retail if it was
Yep,
reprinted.
exactly.
All right.
and hey, if you take it to Gen Con, the guy won't let it go for anything less than
That's
120.
right, and you may get Plano boxes in it when all is said and done. I mean,
right.
it makes perfect sense.
So anyway,
A grudging 7 from Steven.
no, not grudging.
Cellar.
It's it's
Steven's
it's an
over-
objective 7.
He's overcoming his base nature to
Yeah.
appreciate the objective game.
Yeah. So that's Merchant of Venus.
Oh, I had one more thing I wanted to say.
Okay, go ahead.
It's kind of back to component quality.
Okay.
So you have 14 different civilizations, and they're all different, and they sell different goods to each other, and it's cool. What I really, really liked is on the card where you flip over and you see what civilization you've discovered, there's a picture and like a little lore blurb at the bottom of it that I really enjoy when games have things like that, because it's not necessary.
It's not necessary.
But it
and
adds
a
flavor.
little
It adds a
color.
little bit of spice. Like I saw, there's one species that apparently used to rule the galaxy until they ended up being devolved, and now they worship their previous students. And when you look at their lore, they've like ascended into the next plane, and what's left is actually their after images that just make freaky art.
and then the eep eeps just say
Yeah.
eep.
Yeah, and it's fun. I just enjoy. It's a nice touch.
Yeah. I mean,
That's all. I like it.
anytime, and you know, this is something that we've noticed with Fantasy Flight that they happen to do really well, such as with Team Manager. So, I mean, anytime that they can make the effort and do a good job with it, it's definitely appreciated.
They tell a good story.
Yeah. So go out, get on eBay, get this game. Give it a shot. It's really good.
And then let us know how your game went.